to teach you. I'm going to try to cram it into about 40 minutes. And so I'm going to try to give you as much information as I can. I think we may have some time. I think she said we're going to have some time to interact as well. But I'm grateful to be here. I live in Brooklyn, but I flew here this morning from Florida. I'm leaving here and speaking in Texas tonight. And so we're moving, and I'm not here to, nobody told me that I couldn't mention Bernie Sanders' name. I'm not here to campaign for Bernie, but I just want you to understand, and I'll say to you what I said to some of the staff. I'm a huge supporter of Bernie Sanders. I'm not paid by Bernie, I've never been paid by the campaign. I'm a volunteer like anybody else. I do really want you all to get involved. And it is more important to me, and I just want you to hear this from me because many of you may not support Bernie Sanders. First, I just want you to know that's just fine with me. I really want you to get involved in supporting whoever it is you do support for president, for local races. Like, we're living in a time that's way too important just to watch it. It's way too important. Exactly. And we will look back on this time of 2020 and you will want to have the peace of mind of knowing that you did something, that you organized, that you didn't only register people to vote, but you were a part of a campaign. And so I hope that everything you do, that you do even here on campus, to be involved on campus, that you get involved in the campaigns. It's a crazy time, right?
Yes, it is.
And
scary.
When I say it's a crazy time, there's not a single person in the room that's like, what's he talking about? Everybody in the room is like, what part of the craziness is he talking about? Right. But like, nobody in the room is like, seems just fine. Like, we all are deeply aware that we're living in a particularly problematic time. And I think what's so difficult about this time that we're living in is that every given day can be so problematic that it's hard to keep up. Like, it's hard to keep up with what happened this week.
Exactly.
This month. Earlier this year, the President of the United States ordered the assassination of a general of another country that we were not at war with, not in armed conflict with, just literally ordered a missile dropped right on his car. And we just kept on moving. Like, there was a moment where each of us thought like, oh, I think we may just go to war right now. That already seems like years ago. It was like, no, that was January.
Wow.
I swear this time feels like dog years. That had, like, every day, every week, every month has so much going on. Some of it, and people ask me this question all the time. People say, Shaun, is it really that more is going on? Or is it that because of social media and technology, is it that we're now hyper aware of all that's going on? And it's a little bit of both. Social media and technology and the 24-hour news cycle allows us to know a lot more about everything that's going on, but there's a lot going on. Like, there's legitimately a lot of stuff to be concerned about. I want to teach you a lesson. Less than teach you a lesson, I want to give you a tool today that I think you can leave here with that will help you, I hope, understand the time that we're in. I hope it'll give you some insight into how we got here. I'm actually a historian by training. My undergraduate and graduate degrees are in history. And I think most people think I'm like an Instagram guy. And it's like, no, that is, when I wake up in the morning, I don't see myself as a social media anything. I'm a father, first of all. I have 5 kids, and I'm 40, but I've been a dad since I was a teenager.
Wow.
And so my wife and I have been together for 24 years. And we've been together since we were kids. And so much of how I see the world, I see it even through the eyes of my own children. Like my kids range from 7 to 20. And so a lot of what you are experiencing, my kids are experiencing. So I feel like, and that normally weirds college students out because you definitely don't see me as your dad.
Right.
Like most college students are like, hold on, he has a daughter my age?
Right.
Because I'm not quite a dad figure to you, but a lot of how I see the world and a lot of how I fight for the world, I kind of do it with a dad energy. Like, I want the world to be better for my kids. Like, I want the world that they live in longer than I live in, I want it to be better than it is. We had just moved, we lived in California for 5 years, and we moved from California to New York. And if you ever get a chance to travel the world, please do it, even if it's study abroad, even if it's for a week, if it's spring break, if it's for the summer. And you'll know when you travel the world, you'll know what I'm about to tell you is true. Most of the world is so different than the United States. The United States really probably should be 8 or 9 different countries. Mm-hmm. And I remember my family and I got to spend some time in Africa, we got to spend some time in Europe, and I realized like you could take a train from Paris to London in 2 hours. Mm. Like my whole childhood, I thought Germany was, 20 hours away from London, and you realize like, oh, these countries are right next to each other. Like it is easier to get from London to Paris to Germany, 3 countries that speak 3 different languages, than it is to get from San Francisco to San Diego. Like when we moved from California to New York, it was like moving to a different country. And my daughter had started high school. This was 4 years ago. And some people recognized me, and we heard them and they were whispering with some parents and others, and they were nice. They said, "There's at Shaun King." And I thought to myself, it was like one of the first moments where I thought like, here I am in the flesh, and they still like see me as I'm thinking like, no, I am just Shaun King. I'm not at Shaun King. And here we are, and I wasn't even thinking of myself as, it wasn't an at Shaun King moment. I was just at my daughter's school. And it was then that I realized that social media really changes the way you see the world, changes the way you see people. And so I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a historian. And the lesson that I want to teach you today really comes from that historian angle. So I know you probably just came from class or you're about to go to class, and so we're about to have class again. Yeah. So I apologize that we're about to have class, but I want to teach a lesson. And in fact, this is kind of a California story as well, because some of what happens in the beginning of this story I want to tell you, we were living in Southern California at the time. Let me switch to the next slide here. This man is Leopold von Ranke. And if you Google his name, which is down here at the bottom, you don't have to. There are lots of more interesting things to Google. But if you do Google him, he has a great Wikipedia page. And I know for many of you, something's not real unless you see it on Wikipedia. And so he does have a good Wikipedia page. I was in grad school, and we were living in California, and it was January of 2015, and I went to class, and the class was the Introduction to Historiography. Okay, that sounds boring. It's about how you study history. It's a class on the study of history. And the professor put this portrait up, and when I first saw the portrait, it's weird thinking back on it, but I was a little irritated by this. He had done nothing to me. This man has been dead for 150 years. But you have to go all the way back in time.
Right.
In July of 2014, I was living in Southern California. And I was working at an environmental charity called Global Green. And I don't know if you've ever been to Santa Monica, but our offices they weren't swanky, but if your office is in Santa Monica, it's swanky by default, you know?
That's right.
So we had offices in Santa Monica, right a block away from the beach. And it was July 18th of 2014, and I went to the office. It was a normal day. And a buddy of mine that I went to college with sent me a Facebook message. And there's something really weird. You'll notice this. How many of you have a Facebook account? Doesn't mean you don't have beef with Facebook. And so if you raise your hand, it doesn't mean you love Mark Zuckerberg or... How many of you have an Instagram account, right? You have a social media account. Something weird happens. Like, a lot of my friends that knew me from college added me on Facebook, but it had been 15 years since I had been in college. And so they still only saw me as the person I was in college. So 2014, I was 35 years old, I was married with kids. But when I was a college student, like many of you, I was an activist on campus. I went to Morehouse College in Atlanta. I was student government president. I was very much doing protests and demonstrations. I was more like I am today when I was in college in a lot of ways. But a buddy of mine who knew me as Shaun the activist, you gotta realize that's not who I was in 2014. I was a family man, I was working at this environmental charity, but this guy knew me as a guy who had protested against police brutality. When I was a student at Morehouse in 1999, the NYPD had horribly shot this young man named Amadou Diallo 42 times on the doorstep of his home, unarmed, nonviolent. He was just about your age. He was, as a matter of fact, preparing to go to college. And his family was a privileged African family who moved to the United States for educational opportunities. And we protested the shooting death of Amadou Diallo. And so a lot of the students at Morehouse knew me as a guy who organized against police brutality. So I'm at my desk, 2014, the summer, regular day, and a buddy of mine messages me on Facebook and he says, Shaun, something horrible happened in New York. And he said, there's a video on YouTube. You couldn't upload videos to Twitter yet. There was no such thing as Instagram Live or Facebook Live. A lot has changed since 2014. And he said, there's a video on YouTube, and he said, it's on a street corner in New York. And he said, there's a middle-aged black man who's being harassed by police. And he said, the man is telling them, please, please leave me alone. And he said, the police won't leave him alone. And then all of a sudden, an officer comes up behind the man and begins choking the man and wrestles the man to the ground. The officer continues choking. I hadn't seen the video yet. My friend is describing it. And he said, my friend said in the mess, he said, Shaun, the officer chokes him and you can hear the man yelling out, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. And he said, Shaun, the guy dies right there on the sidewalk. And I live in, my office rather was kind of, trying to think of the right word, kind of bougie, I guess is the word. Like I didn't know if the people in my office, I didn't know how they would respond if they saw this video. Now, again, I have to take you back a little bit because at that time in July 2014, there had never been a viral video of police brutality. Like almost every person in the room, sadly, since this video, we've now seen many of those videos. But I didn't even know if I wanted to click on it in front of the people I worked with. I just didn't know, I didn't even know if I wanted to see it. And I waited until some of my colleagues went to lunch and I clicked on the link. It didn't even have his name, but we later came to know that it was the man named Eric Garner. And just as my friend described, but worse, Eric Garner was alive at the beginning of the video and was completely dead by the time the video was over. And I was shook. And I started thinking, like, who can I get to do something about this? Who can I call or email that will know what to do? And for the next week, all I did was obsess over this case. 2 or 3 days after I first saw the video, the case began to go viral. I talked about the case on my personal Facebook page. I didn't have any verified accounts or anything like that. I was just writing on my Facebook page for my friends and family, trying to break down and explain what was happening in that video. And those posts went like super viral. They were shared millions and millions of times. Just about 2 weeks later, I got a call from a friend of mine who said, Shaun, there is a live video on an app called Livestream. Again, no Instagram Live, no Facebook Live, no Periscope, none of those things existed. And he sent me a link and he said, Shaun, there is a dead boy who's been shot and killed by police, and he's just in the middle of the street. And this is how he explained it to me. He said it's in a neighborhood called Ferguson in St. Louis. It wasn't a neighborhood, it was an actual city out in St. Louis County. And I clicked on the link. This was on the weekend, 2 weeks after Eric Garner had been killed. And I saw a body, and there was literally blood flowing from the body on the street. And as soon as I clicked on the link, it was live. People, they weren't protesting. People were screaming and crying. Like, I knew as soon as I saw it that those people knew this boy. Like, you could tell in 15 seconds. These weren't protesters. These were people who were like, why are you leaving him there? Why won't you let me touch him? Like, you could feel the rage, the anger, the hurt, the pain. And I remember thinking, like, it had been 2 weeks since Eric Garner had been killed. I thought to myself, oh my God, American police are killing people every 2 to 3 weeks. That's what I thought. The next year, the Washington Post won the Pulitzer Prize for a database they created on police brutality, but we didn't have a database yet. The next day, I learned about a man named John Crawford, who was shot and killed by police at a Walmart in Ohio. And then the next day, I learned about a man in Los Angeles named Ezell Ford, who was shot and killed by police. And what we came to know that July and that August of 2014 is that American police weren't killing people every 2 to 3 weeks. It wasn't even every 2 to 3 days. It was every few hours. We just didn't know it. Because before social media, if police kill someone in Ferguson, how am I gonna know news in Ferguson? Like, I don't go to the St. Louis News website to learn what goes on there. How am I gonna know if somebody gets shot in Ohio? I don't read Ohio news.
Right.
All of a sudden, social media is allowing people to share stories of their pain, and we're starting to realize in real time, like, oh my God, this is happening all over the country. I quit my job at Global Green and began organizing people to fight back against police brutality. And I had been a pastor for many years, a Christian pastor. And one of the things that I did as a pastor is work with families who were grieving, who had experienced death. And so one of the things I started doing was trying to help families through this pain. And I said something to many of these families that I have just now come to admit was a grave mistake. I met the family of Mike Brown. I met the family of Eric Garner's family became near and dear to me. I became good friends with his daughter, Erica, who herself died just last year while still fighting for justice for her father. I came to know these families that November while we were fighting for justice for Mike Brown and Tamir Rice and John Crawford and Ezell Ford and others. There was a 12-year-old boy named Tamir Rice who was killed by police. I spoke to his family. And I said something to many of these families. I said this to probably 100 different families. I said to them, hold on, listen, hold on, hang in there. We're going to get justice for your family. I mean, I meant it. Like, listen, hold on, don't panic. Hang in there. We're going to get justice for your family. And there was not a single part of my mind that thought I was exaggerating. I did not consider that I was over-promising and was going to under-deliver to these families. I wasn't the only person saying it, but when I said it, I meant it. And it never occurred to me that none of those families would get justice. In fact, nearly 1,200 people were killed by police in 2014, all over the country. The leading state was California. And California will say, well, that's because we're big. Well, it still means you have a big problem. And so people were killed by police up and down California, from the top to the bottom. And of the 1,200 people who were killed by police, 0.00% of them got justice. Not 10 families, not 5, not 3, not 2, 0, nobody. And what we started understanding was the laws and the systems and structures of justice were not built for us. They weren't built to give us justice. They were built as tools of oppression. And when all of a sudden we needed justice from these systems, we started learning these systems had no intention on giving us anything like justice. Like, it wasn't like we went to court and lost the case. They didn't even go to court. The officers who killed Eric Garner, they were never even charged. It wasn't like we got an opportunity to plead our case and lost. They were never charged. Most of these officers were never even fired. Family after family, person after person. I told them, I said, hold on. Don't panic. Hang in there. We're going to get justice for your family. In that November of 2014, that December, we started realizing, family after family, case after case, that nobody was going to get justice. And a lot of activists and organizers all over the country, I think, fell into a real depression. Because we never considered, people stopped their entire lives, and we never considered the possibility that nobody would get justice. So I was angry, I was hurt. There was even a bit of shame, having put everything I had, like, I operated, and many of you probably operate like this. My mother taught me, Shaun, if you put your all into something, you'll get it. She taught me some version of that lesson. Like, my mother worked for 45 years in a light bulb factory in Versailles, Kentucky. It's like worked a brutally difficult job every day of her life. And she just taught me, like, listen, if you put in the work, you'll get the results. And we put in the work. It got no results. And we were confused and perplexed and hurt and ashamed. And we weren't even the families. These families were crushed. And all of a sudden, I go back to school that following January, and the teacher puts this man's face on the screen, and I am thinking to myself, what in the world could this man teach me that's even remotely relevant to the world we're living in? Now, I don't know how it is here, but most colleges only have like 3 to 4 woke professors. Okay, so they may actually be in the room right now, or maybe not, I don't know. But I sat through the lesson that day, and I left, and I was angry, and I said, I'm dropping this class. And I went online, it was still during the ad drop period, and there was nothing that I could really add. Like, the only thing that was left was like advanced badminton. And I was like, who the hell loved badminton 1 so much that they have badminton 2? And so I told my wife, I said, listen, I'm not gonna go to school this semester. And she's like, no, you're gonna go. And she had sacrificed for me to do this and was like, you're not gonna stop now. And I went back to this class. I wanted to drop it. And I swear, through no ingenuity of my own, the lesson that I learned in that class changed the way I saw the world. I'm gonna very quickly teach you the lesson and hope that it impacts you as well. This is Leopold von Ranke. He is seen by most historians as the father of the study of history. What that means is he created some of the first college degree programs in history. There were historians thousands of years before this man, but he really built the field of the study of history into a lot of what it is today. Now, he did several things that people really respect. He developed some of those first bachelor programs in history. I don't know if any of you are history majors here, if you have a history major. Oh, good, all right. Thank the four of us in the room. Yeah, four loud people, I do appreciate that. It was 4 people, but they had the claps of 10. So he created these college degree programs, but the thing that he did that has stood the test of time is what I want to teach you. He built some of what most people think to be the first detailed timelines of human history. Now, this is a picture of 10,000 faces from human history, and every time I look at this collage, I see somebody different every time. Like, I particularly love, this is Rerun from What's Happening. And you have to be like 40 and older to even know who that is.
Yeah.
So when you get out of here, go to YouTube and type in Rerun, What's Happening, Dance. And there's just a little special treat for you that'll be waiting for you there.
But
do you?
Yeah.
I just saw you doing it. Do you want to do it for all of us?
No.
You just gave me Okay. We would like for you to do it.
No.
No? Okay. All right. We won't put any more pressure on you. So later, just go Google Rerun. You did a little sneak peek right there.
It's a treat for the rest of them to see later.
Okay. Every time I look at this, I see somebody different. Like, I saw Chewbacca a second ago from Star Wars. Where is he? Oh, there he is. Yeah. I see Chewbacca. And so for almost 50 years, Leopold von Ranke began collecting stories. He was a story collector of every hero, every villain, every politician, every warlord, every inventor, every artist. He would get their stories and collect it. And what he started to do, not over a few months, not over a few years, but over 5 decades, was he began getting all of these types of stories, and he began putting them in chronological order. And there was something that he expected to happen, and it did not happen. Here's what he expected. When Leopold von Ranke was doing this, there was also somebody who actually looks kind of similar. There was a scientist named Charles Darwin. You've heard of Charles Darwin? What is he known for? Natural selection, the theory of evolution. That idea was, Darwin's natural selection, the theory of evolution, was basically that over time, human beings got better and better and better and better and better and better over time. What von Ranke was on his own, what he was trying to find out is, when I get all of the stories of humanity and put them in chronological order, will it show me that human beings are getting better and better and better and better and better over time? Theoretically, let's say these are the early humans, and all the way up in the top right-hand corner is us. That's us. Theoretically, what he wanted to see is, when I put all of these stories in chronological order, will it show human beings getting better and better? And so he put it, this is an example of a timeline of the history of London. And so von Ranke got all of these stories and he put them in chronological order. And what he found was that when you put humanity in chronological order, it does not look like this. Human beings are not getting better and better and better and better over time. What he found was that when you finally put all of these people in order, their technology gets better. Their gadgets, their stuff, their inventions get better and better and better. But if you put humanity in chronological order, it looks more like this. That sometimes human beings, von Ranke found, were amazing. Now, it's hard to believe today in 2020 that there was ever a time where everybody just got along. Now, I'm not talking about like biblical Garden of Eden, but von Ranke found periods of human history where there was no war in the whole world. It doesn't mean there weren't problems, but he found periods, and I don't mean a day. I mean a generation, a time, an era. He found times of human history where there was no war, little famine, and the world was at peace. That would be that moment. And then all of a sudden, humanity would crash, and it would claw its way out of where it found itself and get its head above water, only to crash again. And as he put all of these people's stories in chronological order, what he found was that he had confused technology with humanity. In fact, this could represent 10,000 years or 1,000 years or 100 years. This could just be 10 years of technology. So say this graph is the telephone. So this is the telephone of my childhood. Now, when I was a kid, there were no cell phones. There was no internet. There was only one phone in the house, and it was on the wall of my mother's kitchen, and it had a long curly cord on it, and there was no such thing as even having a private conversation. If you wanted to have like a steamy conversation with your significant other, you had to whisper it or do it late at night. And I tried to explain this to my kids. There was something really creepy that could also happen. People could pick up other phones in the house and secretly on the low listen to your conversation. That would be like you on your cell phone saying, I'm gonna listen to someone, like that would be unheard of. And it happened regularly. Like you would pick up the phone and somebody was there and you would just listen a little bit. I dropped one of my kids off at middle school, and we were living again in Southern California, and I had just gotten her a phone, and I dropped her off at school, and I did this, like I dropped her off, I said, call me if you need me. She was in 7th grade. And she said, Dad, I thought she was punking me. She said, Dad, I'll call you, but why are you doing this banana thing on your face?